Welcome, fellow Pratchett lovers. I am the Medieval Gnome, and I am bringing you this week's compilation of Pratchips. Our book this past week was The Last Continent. The Last Continent is a good name for it in two ways, because it's also the last Discworld novel in which Rincewind is the protagonist, and it's also a reference to the last continent to be quote-unquote discovered, or as Lord Vetinari would insist, trespassed upon. Round world equivalent is Australia. On the Discworld, it's not anything like Australia at all. Keep that in mind going forward. On the Discworld, it's 4X, as in XXXX, because that's where Porky geographers would put a blank space on the map which they thought would be a good space for a continent, and XXXX was what they wrote upon that undiscovered. And it wasn't even really in those terms undiscovered. Everybody knew it had been discovered. It was just nobody knew where it was. If you don't quite see that distinction, don't ask me. Just talk to the wizards at UU. Maybe they can give you some kind of an answer. But Rincewind ends up there alone, but without even the luggage this time, as a result of a terrible accident, apparently involving potatoes, at least to some degree. And Rincewind certainly doesn't know where he is when he ends up there. He knows that he is in a place which is unbearably hot, unbelievably dry, and populated by every kind of stinging, biting, nipping kind of lizard or spider you can come up with. A party of UU wizards come in search of him, but in the beginning they don't realize that's what they've actually done. In the beginning, they think they've found themselves a nice little hideaway and a great place to have a midwinter vacation, until Mrs. Whitlow lets a window close and all kinds of hell eventuates. Meanwhile, Rincewind has been run in on a charge of sheep rustling, but as he is told over and over again during his ventures on the last continent, she'll be right. He also has no worries said at him a whole bunch of times. But again, this place absolutely does not resemble Australia in any way, shape, or form. So, good day, mate. The Last Continent is our book, and the person or character chosen for closer scrutiny is that fine figure of a woman, the head housekeeper for Unseen University, Mrs. Whitlow. As the head housekeeper, Mrs. Whitlow is very visible above stairs as well as below them, and over time several wizards develop a crush on Mrs. Whitlow, including in The Last Continent, the senior wrangler. Mrs. Whitlow is in a position which she finds somewhat embarrassing but actually very advantageous when she ends up on the unknown island with 6 wizards and the librarian, and you can tell she pretty much likes all the attention, and she gets a lot of it from the wizards who are stuck on the island with her. But then they run into the creator, and Mrs. Whitlow is duly respectful, but I think she's also wryly amused at what this creator is up to and how he's going at it. But she walks in on the wizards trying to explain sexual reproduction to the creator, and just listening a little bit, she realized that the wizards know absolutely nothing about sexual reproduction. And so she eventually stops the creator and takes him aside, tells him that these clowns have absolutely no idea what they're talking about, but she is going to fill him in on how it works. He's completely stunned by learning the facts of life at his age, but when he then goes to explain them to the wizards, there is an incredible amount of confusion and embarrassment, and she really has to stop herself from giving a guffaw at what she is hearing. But she doesn't give that guffaw because she is Mrs. Whitlow, and that wouldn't be proper. She and the wizards finally end up on 4X after a very perilous journey by boat and surfboard. One of the results of all this is temporal instability amongst the individuals who have arrived across a space of several thousand years. At one point, Mrs. Whitlow appears as a 25-year-old Mrs. Whitlow, and I think that's safe to say she sets some wizardly hearts racing, and that's probably all it's safe to say. So that's all we will say for now. Next time, however, we'll be talking about Mono Island, and I will talk to you then. Although our book this week is The Last Continent, our place is not. Our place is Mono Island, a locale with some of the funniest scenes in the book in it, and a place that the wizards, that is to say, Ridcully and the senior faculty, managed to get to accidentally whilst they are looking for the missing professor of cruel and egregious geography, whom they need to find in order to find Rincewind, because they need to find out what the librarian's name is, because his morphic field has become unstable and he goes back and forth between being an orangutan and a piece of furniture. But in order to help him, they need to know his name, and nobody but Rincewind probably knows what that name is. The faculty reach Mono Island by means of a dimensional portal, and Mrs. Whitlow comes through that portal sometime after them, bringing them luncheon, but she managed to close the portal after her, and so the 6 wizards, the librarian, and Mrs. Whitlow are all stuck on Mono Island. And this island, we later learn, is an island that the god of creation is using to try to do some creating. And this may be part of creating the as yet uncreated continent of 4X, which has only been there for 100,000 years. Nobody's sure. But the continent can't be finished until Rincewind can show up on it and, among other things, make rain. But the wizards eventually make it to 4X along with Mrs. Whitlow, leaving Mono Island in a boat that looks very much like a pumpkin, and leaving the creator god on Mono Island to get on with his work, which is going to take a radical step, if not forwards, at least sideways, once he implements the principles of sexual reproduction, which Mrs. Whitlow explained to him on Mono Island. And it's not what you think, but it does leave the status of Mono Island unclear, because the creator presumably would begin his experimentation with that other way of making new things. And speaking of things, our thing for the book, Last Continent, is going to be, I guess you'll have to wait till tomorrow to find out. We are dipping into the last continent this week, and since it is Thursday, it's time to quickly consider something from the last continent. And sometimes that is a difficult determination, depending on whether the book we're looking at had a lot of things in major roles or not. For the last continent, I have really got to go with the luggage. I am going against the folklore of Discworld, in fact, which says perhaps the strangest of all life forms on the disc is the luggage. Certainly made of wood, yet its multiple legs and strong aggressive instincts are equally certainly proof that it is no mere plant or plant product. Very, very certainly it has a mind of its own. Vegetable with animal connections is a fair summary. So why did I pick the luggage? Well, the luggage comes on board on day one, and we are told that Two Flowers luggage is a magic box, and indeed it seems to behave that way. Exhibits a sort of limited telepathy in that it always knows which item it's owner is going to be requiring, and it shows that it has the instinct or the programming to defend its master if such should become necessary. But we all know that the luggage gets into a lot of different situations and has a lot of different experiences which transform it from a box made of sapient pearwood with magical properties to a thoroughly sapient, magical being with dislikes and desires, with an ego and an id. You get the idea. It also comes to radiate an aura of bloody-mindedness. And when Rincewind is asked whether or not the luggage is dangerous, he said there's two schools of thought about that. There's some people who say it's dangerous, and others who say it's very dangerous. In the last continent, the luggage is lost in time and space, but it finally senses Rincewind's presence somewhere on 4X, and in fact, the luggage comes to be involved with a troupe of female impersonators who adopt him and call him Trunky. So I guess it's safe to say that in a lot of ways, the luggage showed its soft side in the last continent. Thank you so much for listening. Please come by our Facebook page, Tales from the Drum, and leave a comment or two. And please stay tuned now for a very unexplained phenomenon. This glowing-eyed creature has been spotted before here in the Medieval Gnome Studios. We were attempting in this case to entice it out of its hiding place so we could possibly identify it. As you can see, it shows a lot of interest in the lure in the beginning, but then simply comes to the point where we can no longer get its attention.